When did video games become a full-time job? I don't even mean in the sense of esports. If you're so incredibly good at your craft that people will pay to see you do it, then that's just as valid as getting paid to be good at kicking a ball about, or hitting a tiny ball with a stick a really long way, or throwing a ball through a little hoop, or any of the many other things humans have decided to do with their balls. But that's not what this is about. What I mean is that it's not simply enough to play a video game anymore. They have to consume our time entirely. When are you supposed to find time to play video games when you're so busy playing video games? I say that in jest, but it's actually kind of true. I find myself never finding the time to play traditional beginning and an end games because I'm far too busy playing never-ending games as a service type affairs that will not abide you putting it down for a while because otherwise you'll miss out on all this stuff! Look, it's shiny and we're taking it away soon, so you need to play it now to get it! Games didn't used to be this way, so how did we get here? What are the consequences? And is there any way out?
She needs premium, dude! Premium! Dude!
I think it's fair to say all this originated and evolved out of MMOs in the free-to-play space, and even more so, free-to-play MMOs. So, taking MMOs, let's look back to 2004 and the rise of World of Warcraft, probably the first MMO to capture the imagination of people in a really big way. This is one of those things where I take flack for ignoring earlier MMOs, but A, I don't know enough about the intricacies of those myself, and B, WoW was big. Like, really big. It pulled in an audience far broader than any MMO before it and basically redefined the genre, so screw you, I'm talking about WoW. In the beginning, there was leveling, dungeons, and raiding. PvP was restricted to open-world skirmishes for the most part, and once you reached max level you needed a social group, a guild, to dig into dungeon and raid content. Now, trying to herd 40 cats into working together to kill ancient gods was never going to be everyone's cup of tea, and take a quick look at WildStar to see how that one works out in the long term. So, other ways were needed to keep people playing, and far more crucially, ponying up $10 every month. As I'm sure we all know, the solution to that was, and is, grind. PvP battlegrounds to let you grind your way to the top of the faction leaderboards. Reputation grinds to let you slowly work your way towards cool gear. Obviously, grind implementations vary across games and genres, but basically give the player something to work towards that can't be done quickly, and if they're already hooked on the game, it probably doesn't even matter if the reward is proportional to the effort needed to attain it. As other MMOs quickly realised they couldn't command a monthly subscription the same way WoW did, we saw a rapid rise in free-to-play games, coinciding with a fledgling mobile market who were also discovering that the best way to make money was to get people to install the game first, and then charge them later. Some of the early successes in the freemium space look a little odd and backwards in the context of current games. Look at Candy Crush. You get the first so many levels for free, and then it stops you. If you pay the price, you get the rest of the game, but you only get so many attempts to the level, and they ramp up the difficulty big time. Fail and you have to wait, or pay a fee to keep playing. The idea is clearly to get people hooked enough on the addictive gameplay that they'll willingly pay to play more when they hit a roadblock. Anything for that next hit, man! It's something that's fallen by the wayside though. Last time I recall anything like that was Spiral Knights back in the days of Mist Energy, before even they gave it up as a bad job. No, far better to let your players have their fill, because the ones who play the longest are the most invested, and the most likely to open their wallets. It's this principle that has driven most of the more recent mechanics in gaming. Probably the first, and certainly the simplest system to drag you back in day after day against your will to slowly crush your soul is the daily login reward. These run the gamut from a token something something, to a once daily basic loot box freebie, to a horrifying month-long snakes and ladders of compulsion dragging you back in for ever greater rewards the more addicted you are. However it's executed, the goal is the same. Don't you dare think about playing anything else because otherwise you'll miss all this stuff! And don't you want stuff? The downside of this though is it incentivizes minimal engagement. Whomst among us hasn't had a phase where we kinda care about a game, but do actually want to play something else for a bit, but still want all the stuff from the first game, so we log in for as long as it takes to click the gimme the stuff button and bounce right back out of the game. Maybe we do that for a week or two, maybe we come back later, or maybe we get bored of collecting stuff in a game we're not playing and we don't come back. I've definitely been there. I suspect you have. That's not what the developers want though. If you're not properly playing, you're not getting addicted. If you're not getting addicted, you won't buy any hats, and that's no good. What if we gave you a reason to come back every day, but demanded you play a bit of the game to get your stuff? Would that work? How about daily quests then? Once a day you'll have a thing to do, maybe even multiple things, and you can have stuff in exchange. But you do have to make a nominal effort for it. But since you're here and playing the game already, you might as well hang about and play some more anyway. Probably the skeeviest implementation I've seen of this has been in closers, and mercifully nowhere else, though I'd wager other Korean MMOs might have similar mechanics. Here, your reward is earned by straight up investing a minimum amount of time per day to earn your reward. Log in and get a thing. Play for half an hour and get another thing. Play for, say, 2 or 3 hours to get a really good thing. You might object to this a lot less if you're really invested in the game and are basically playing a bunch daily anyway, but it is encouraging your addiction in a dangerous way, and if you're not playing that much, it's thoroughly disrespecting your time. Now we're getting into what really makes games as services such a chore. MMOs certainly had limited time events way back when, occasional festivals to break things up and give you something a bit different to look forward to, usually tied to real world events. You can get some stuff, and it's only going to be here for a couple of weeks and it won't be around anymore, so you have to play now or you won't have it. Depending on how significant the event is and how good the rewards are, it can tap quite heavily into FOMO, fear of missing out. The freemium market, being run by soulless capitalist demons, has taken this concept and distilled it down to an entire category of game. It's evolved beyond events to drag you back in occasionally, it has to be constant. The moment one event ends, the next begins. Every 2 weeks like clockwork, bam, more stuff you need to have. 2 weeks, bam, more stuff you need to have. I played Final Fantasy Record Keeper, a freemium mobile Final Fantasy game a few years back. Their events overlapped. The next event starts before the last finishes. Every single one brought new characters or gear or weapons that were just slightly better than everything before it, so you obviously have to have it or your team won't be the best. I quit that hard because it was a soul-crushing chore and I did not need another one alongside my day job. There are even games which are entirely time-limited events. The freemium mobile version of Mario Kart had at launch nothing more to the game than crushing 2-week grind fests. Maybe that's changed now, but I was not prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt. Okay, is there a way we can make this worse somehow? In the free market, there is always a way. Let me introduce you to the Battle Pass. I'm mostly familiar with this from playing Dauntless, but I believe it was Fortnite which pioneered the concept. I've also seen similar systems in Destiny, Rocket League, and Fall Guys, so they're definitely becoming the new thing to have. So how does a Battle Pass work? Well, it's a time-limited event system, so you have to keep coming back for the new stuff. But we don't just give you the stuff, oh no, you need to work at it and work hard. You earn points for doing things in-game, and these count towards a progress track with rewards along the way. But there are 2 progress tracks. One is just kind of okay. It's a lot of work for maybe 1 or 2 good rewards near the end. The other is chock full of goodies, but you have to pay a fee to unlock it. You're paying for cosmetics, but you're not. You're paying for the privilege of being able to grind for those cosmetics. Dauntless at the very least has taken this a step further again, introducing a new currency primarily earned by continuing to grind beyond the end of the rewards so that you can buy more time-limited stuff. Don't you dare step off this treadmill for even a second or you'll miss everything. Okay, so game developers are constantly giving us new content and reasons to keep playing their games. Why is this a bad thing?
I demand the ancient ritual of murmur firmer or consequences!
For me, the first and most obvious reason, the one that frustrated me enough to start making this video in the first place, is that it denies us new experiences. For all the time that we spend chasing the next shiny bauble offered to us this month, if only we'd play the game just a little more, we could have enjoyed multiple other complete experiences. Continuing to use Dauntless illustratively as my own current addiction, I played over 150 hours on PC, and then some on Switch, but at the same time I'll balk at the idea of playing a 40-hour long RPG or open world game. I just don't have the time! I can't even begin to fathom how much Sea of Thieves I've played, but I have a Steam wishlist of over 100 titles dating from the past 5 years that I really want to get around to playing one day, and it's not as though I can't afford them, I just don't have the time. Which is to say nothing of my games libraries filled with titles I have bought and not gotten around to playing. If we dig a bit deeper though, there's another reason games that never end are bad. One that's a bit more sinister than I haven't gotten around to playing Transistor after 6 years. There is an argument to be made that free games offer up experiences to those of us on more limited budgets. And whilst that's true to a certain extent, we must remember that it still holds that if you are not the customer, you are the product. They're not letting you play for free just because they're so nice. If you're playing for free, you're likely there to make up server numbers, fill up the matchmaking system, generally make the paying players, the whales, feel superior with their bling. At the same time, you're also feeding yourself into a mechanism cynically engineered and refined over the years to compel you to play more and more, and hopefully to part with your cash eventually, whether you can afford it or not. There are direct parallels to be drawn between game mechanics and the gambling industry's practices, and at the most very basic level is this first step of getting you through the door. Casinos have for years offered deals like free bets to get you in the building because they know, on average, more people than not will stay and spend more once they're in. Getting you into the game for free, knowing they'll recoup the value later, is the same basic premise. These parallels are no coincidence. The same people who help make casinos so addictive and profitable have for years been used as consultants in the freemium games market. Psychologists who understand the human mind and what makes us tick are brought in to find the most effective ways of keeping us coming back for more. And the gambling industry does have a real addiction problem. In the UK specifically, the government in 2007 relaxed a lot of the regulation around gambling, allowing much more widespread advertising. High streets are now littered with bookmakers. The token nod to acknowledging the issue of addiction is the slogan, "When the fun stops, stop," usually uttered under the breath in a fraction of a second at the end of an advert. A slogan which, it should be noted, has never convinced anyone not to place a bet. But everyone lining their pockets off the back of ruining people's lives gets to point at it and say, "See, we're telling them not to ruin their lives, so it's on them, really." But video games don't even have a "when the fun stops, stop," which is why I have to do this. The video games industry defense is, it's just a video game, which gets wielded to deflect quite a lot of valid criticism. But if you've engineered your game to use the same techniques as a casino to keep people playing longer and putting money into your machine, regardless of the impact on their health and relationships, like a casino, then that defense doesn't seem quite so solid. Where they're not like a casino is in their regulation. We tend to recognize that things which humans find addictive, it's generally not in their best interests to be addicted to them. Tobacco is controlled, if not outlawed, in the vast majority of countries worldwide for good reason. Likewise, alcohol and many other drugs. And gambling too, the UK's steps towards deregulation notwithstanding, is recognised as addictive, damaging to people's lives and appropriately controlled. The one recurring theme of these regulations is to restrict the access children and teens have to them, as they are more impressionable and can be hooked more readily. The 16-year-olds drinking vodka from the bottle outside a seedy back alley bar on a Friday night might beg to differ, but we try to keep these substances and experiences out of their hands until we deem them old enough to make their own choices in life, for better or for worse. And yet games, designed to be as addictive as gambling, are given free rein to market themselves as heavily to a young and impressionable audience as they want. Why? Well, it's just a video game. This discussion and criticism is most prominently highlighted on the subject of loot boxes. I'm not the first to spill ink on the subject, and I won't be the last. Loot boxes, in whatever guise they come in, are slot machines, pure and simple. They're abstracted away just enough to pretend they're not, but if you pull back the curtain even an inch, it's pretty obvious. You put coins in, you pull a lever, if you're lucky, your prize comes out. Now, maybe those coins are in fact rubies, or platinum, or V-bucks. It doesn't really matter. There's either a small financial investment or a more significant time investment behind it that's being abstracted away with that magic moon money. Maybe it's not a slot machine, but opening a box, or a card pack, or whatever is supposed to be going on in Mario Kart World Tour. It doesn't matter, it's all an abstraction to make it look less like a slot machine. And finally, most importantly, technically, whatever you win has no financial value. I guess the CSGO community missed that memo. Someone should tell this guy selling a virtual sticker for £1,400? And you're sure this isn't gambling? If it looks like a slot machine, and it pays out like a slot machine, I have my suspicions. But it's okay, it's still only Magic Moon money. Valve gets to keep all that money, you just get store credits. But wait. Is that actually true? Okay, fine, so any game where you can gamble for stuff, and yes, I'm going to be that blunt about it now, and then trade those items to other players, is going to cultivate some manner of shady black market. But is that the fault of the devs? They never wanted that to happen, they only wanted some fun exclusive items that players could establish a healthy trade-based marketplace with, right? Should they be punished for a minority of users exploiting the system? I actually can't pretend I have the answers at this point. We're getting more than a bit philosophical, and they're the kind of issues we're likely to see get hammered out when or if they're addressed in legislation in the nearish future. What if we ignore tradable stuff altogether then? The prizes for pulls in gacha games, and the colloquial term pull should illustrate the relationship with slot machines here, aren't typically tradable or saleable, and many games aren't even multiplayer, so their impact on other players' experience is effectively zero too. Their monetary value can quite rightly be said to be zero. But then is monetary value the only value something can be said to have? Clearly not. If you desire anything, whether hat or 5-star battle waifu, it must intrinsically have some kind of value to you, even if it is genuinely impossible to sell that thing on to another person later. And this takes us back to our laws on advertising gambling to minors. It's only technically gambling if the prize is monetary. If it's a hat, a waifu, or a hat for your waifu, it's not gambling. It's just a video game. Which brings us to yet another point of contemplation, to which I don't have the answer. Why is the only kind of value to which we ascribe any importance monetary? If we can concede that there are things that people can want beyond money, why do we say it's impossible to gamble for those things? Interestingly, a few countries have acknowledged and attempted to address this issue, noting its exploitative nature. In 2012, Japan outlawed a style of gacha known as complete gacha, which leaned heavily on users having a weak understanding of probability and the effect of sunk cost. In 2017, China introduced legislation requiring games to declare the odds of winning any given item from a gacha system, and then more recently in 2019 introduced limits on how many pulls per day a player can make. Not that I personally think it's enough. The limit is 50. If you're opening 50 loot boxes every day, you have a gambling problem and should seek help. Gacha is a rabbit hole all of its own, and I could probably easily dedicate a full video to just that, but suffice to say, when governments are forced to step in and tell you to rein it in, it's an exploitative business model. So, we've established many modern video games are addictive by design, and that by and large very little is being done to either acknowledge or address this issue. So what can we do?
Oh, Lord. What should I do?
Keep gaming.
What?
It means gambling. Keep gambling.
Oh, righty-o.
Bearing in mind I am not a qualified therapist, I'm just a professional internet opinion, however, I think the first step any of us can take is to assess our own habits, and if we can see any problems, acknowledge them. The first step is admitting you have a problem, right? Not necessarily in a, my name is Moroka and I'm a video game addict kind of way, but take a look at your gaming life and spot the places where routines, if not habits, are forming. If you feel you're giving them undue priority over other things you either want or need to be doing, you can look at taking steps to address them. I'll tell you my routine. I play Animal Crossing while I'm eating breakfast, try to get my daily island chores done. But honestly, I have 15 million bells and 250,000 Nook miles, and I've found all the fossils that exist. I could probably skip pretty much everything except watering my blue roses, because I obviously need more of them. I play Pokemon Go on my way to work, but that's entirely a box-ticking exercise now. I've not played it in a particularly social fashion for quite a long time, and I'm just grinding it for the sake of it. I should probably uninstall that or something. Games I often play on an evening are Dauntless and Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is very much a social thing now. I rarely sail solo, so I'm fairly happy to stick with that. But Dauntless has become a treadmill for me. I've killed all the monsters many times over, I have all the epic weapons, I consider myself passably proficient in at least 4 types of weapon. I'm just playing it to grind out the latest battle pass now, so that seems like one for the chopping block too. So there we go, I found and addressed 2 gaming problems just like that. As long as I don't immediately replace them with something like Total War Elysium, I could maybe even try playing Transistor instead. Or reviewing some games, wouldn't that be novel? I think even if you wouldn't consider yourself an addict in any way, it can still be healthy to do this kind of exercise to recognize addictive patterns and see if we're doing things because we want to, or if we've simply conditioned ourselves to, and if our energies would be better spent elsewhere. I don't think the problem is going to go away anytime soon. Political systems are notoriously slow at spotting and addressing this kind of thing, so it'll take something significant before anyone actually forces game developers to stop making their games like casinos. I don't know what's next after Battle Passes. If I had the next sinister design mechanic to coerce players into staying longer and paying more, I probably wouldn't be inclined to share it here anyway. It's probably worth a few mil at least. The best we can do as consumers is to do as consumer advocates like Total Biscuit always pushed for people to do, and to vote with your wallet. That is to say, stop buying into exploitative models. And that includes playing for free, because free players are still required to sustain the model. If you're going to come to me with the argument that you really, genuinely can't afford anything, so you need free-to-play games, then allow me to point you over to the Epic Games Store, where they're dishing out a veritable constant barrage of high-quality free titles. Of course, it's still a drive to bring people to the platform to spend their money there instead. Nothing is ever done out of kindness in business like this. But it's still free games, and a lot of them are very good, and you should play them. Anyway, if you'll excuse me, I've got 6 years of indie games I skipped over to catch up on.